There's a couple different main ways you can close more deals next year. First, you can pick up some reoccurring lead sources like a probate sale attorney or working with investors. Or on the other hand, you can focus on reducing the amount of cancellations overall. Well, we're going to talk about all of the above in today's recap of the Monday Morning Mastermind. What's happening? I'm JC Agajanian, broker associate with the Whistle Realty Group at eXp, bringing you the recap, the breakdown, the summary of the Monday Morning Mastermind. As we do every week, Mastermind's put on by the Fast Forward Network, an amazing top producing group of agents, brokers, and team leads from across the country. They get together to discuss topics on today's business and how we can improve it for all. Today we're talking about three main subjects. First of all, working probate sales. The next one, we're going to be talking about working with investors and how to really make the most out of those types of opportunities. And finally, we're talking about the rise in cancellation rates that have been taking place over this year and how to address those and keep your business healthy. So let's get straight into our first topic today. An agent had a question about working with probate sales, how to get the business, and how to go about doing it once you have some relationships. So the first bit of information provided was to go direct to the attorneys, because that's not the only way you can get these probate sales, but that was the first one, of course. Get your networking groove on, basically. Reach out to everyone who is in the legal field or maybe legal field adjacent and see who they know that happens to work in this specific type of legal work. Go after these introductions proactively, try and get phone calls, coffee breaks, lunches, drinks on the books so you can get to know this person and see if they're even someone you'd want to hang out with, let alone conduct business with on a regular basis. One agent spoke up from the mastermind this morning and has really made this his focus. This is one of his core pillars of his business. He's made a lot of inroads, and he actually at this point sponsors a lot of local attorney groups in town for their mixers, for their networking meetings, whatever it is they have going on. He didn't go into detail, but he is one of the core sponsors, and he has been working these attorney agent relationships for quite a long time. Like I said in the beginning, even if you don't have a direct maybe past client relationship or familial relationship with a probate attorney, there's a good chance you know somebody in the legal world. And just like all of us realtors, of course we know somebody who specializes in one thing or another. The legal field is even more bifurcated and fractured with specialties, a lot more so than our industry. So there's a good chance if you know one attorney, you can ask them, who do you know that does maybe family law or probate law? These are two great sources of reoccurring revenue for us agents, and then seek that introduction that way. Getting to the point of having the relationship is the tough part. Just like finding that seller in the first place, once you've got the client who trusts you, running the transaction is not extremely difficult, barring the unusual circumstances. The case is similar with making these attorney relationships. It's hard to get in with someone, and they're not always going to be the most open because, frankly, there's probably a lot of agents that have let them down in the past. There's plenty of people that get into a position to take a listing like this and don't know what they're doing, or just don't do it well, or simply have poor communication, whatever the case may be. There's going to be a little bit of resistance there, but that's where you need to overcome it and press in with whatever value proposition you can come up with. The good thing is, once you make and establish a solid relationship with someone like this who is in a position to give you reoccurring business, there's a good chance you could be getting 4 to 5 listings per month from one of a few different attorneys that you have in your stable, fast forwarding a year or two down the road and assuming you've made some great relationships. Like I said before though, they don't all think a ton of agents, so there's going to be, you know, some walls up a little bit. Ways to get around that are going to be pretty simple. First of all, find someone who speaks attorney language, basically, specifically someone who speaks probate attorney language, and ask them questions about how to have conversations with these people. You've got to learn keywords, you've got to understand the process, You've got to know what questions to ask when it comes to maybe a new potential lead and where they're at. Like, you've got to speak that language, and finding someone to coach you through that is going to be your best way to do it. You've got to act and sound the part before you really have the experience to play the part. Down the road, this stuff will come easily and naturally, but when you are learning, of course, you have the expertise to carry out the real estate transaction, but you may not have that lingo to dialogue with them yet. So that'll come with experience. Another thing that's interesting, and maybe just kind of a show of good faith, is to mention to them, like, you're an attorney. You could get licensed with simply taking an exam. You don't have to do any of the prerequisite or required coursework. I could give you a fee, a referral fee, if you just get licensed. I'd be happy to walk you down that path and help you out so we could work together even more. To be honest with you, most of them don't have the time, couldn't be bothered to do this. They just like having someone who is not going to cause more hassle in their life and is going to take stress off their plate the same way a seller at home is going to be thinking when you come along and you happen to know how to do everything for them and make the process as smooth and simple as possible. Your attorney relationship is going to feel the same way and likely won't even reach out to you for that referral fee. Like I said at the beginning, attorneys are not the only way to get yourself involved with some of these probate sales. Otherwise, you can go through the news or listings and publications to find out when there's a trust or an estate that needs to be settled through probate. What we're looking for in these publications or in these notifications is how to figure out who to find the personal representative. That's going to be the person responsible for the trust and handling this probate through the process. That person is like the golden seller that you have been looking for in your farm, right? You're going to call them, you're going to text them, you're going to email them, and you're going to be serious about this. You're going to be building out a campaign 5 weeks long or longer to get a hold of this personal representative. Once you get a hold of them, you can explain that you specialize in probate transactions. You're going to help them go through this process with as little hassle as possible. They might not even know what to do first, and for sure they don't want to deal with the hassles that come with liquidating a property. So the majority of the time, once you get a hold of this person, they're going to be actually grateful that you did and that you know what you're doing and that you can take one more thing off their shoulders of dealing with this large estate that they are likely having to make decisions on behalf of all the time. Once you get to that point and you're having the conversation, you want to be able to stack on the value. Explain to them that you can just tell them to take what they want that's of value, and we can organize and facilitate an estate sale. We've got relationships with great people that know how to run a great estate sale and get rid of all this crap from this home. Follow that up with handyman or contractor support. We can change out these flooring for you. We can get the paint done. We can do the basics, and we can handle it for you. All you got to do is cover the bill. We'll take on the rest from there. And then explain to them how you're going to prep the property for sale, and you're going to actually get market value for it by having it staged once the fix-ups have been done. You're going to talk about your marketing plan and all the exposure that you're going to do, and you're going to say all of this is just hands off for you. I will keep you updated on what's taking place, but we do not need you involved in making decisions. We take that off your shoulders and we put that on ours. Of course, this sounds like an amazing opportunity for someone who's not getting paid to handle this probate trust anyways, right? Yes, I agree. One of the team leads from Colorado actually spoke up and said he's got a whole page built out on his website explaining much of what I just went through to his potential clients. And if you want to get the information on that, just shoot me a message and I'll be happy to send you the link for that Colorado team talking about probate. Well, that's going to wrap it up for the probate talk. We're going to move on to our next subject of the morning, which is working with investors. Question came in with basically saying, listen, we haven't done a lot of this in the past. We've got a deal that's frankly a great investor property. We usually just do traditional sales, and he didn't know how to talk to the investor. Really the questions was surrounding making sure you get the relist on the back end, but the question kind of changed through the conversation. And the first question that one of our more senior brokers, also team lead, who has lots of experience selling homes, maybe just not a lot in this type of sector, was, hey, why aren't you buying this property yourself? How come you're not taking advantage of this flip opportunity and making possibly 6 figures or more on the flip instead of worrying about getting the buy side and the list side and then making sure that you can get something cheap on the relist side? Like, sure, that is the right way to have your thought process going. If you're going to have a great opportunity here and you're going to be offering it up, surely getting 2 sides and maybe a half of a third side is way better than just getting one. But let's think about it even more bigger picture. If you've got the opportunity, if you've got the deal that stands to make somebody a lot of money, why not you step in and make that money yourself? He didn't know how to get hard money, and there was just kind of a lot of concerns. Interestingly, he said he did have some contractors and handymen in place, so it seemed like he could get the job done if he had it funded and if he had it in his ownership. But it was all just new and foreign to him. The big lesson we think that we're all learning here is, if you've got the deal, you've got a property that the seller is happy to just get rid of it and they're prioritizing time and ease as opposed to top of market pricing, like you've found the gold there, right? So let's figure out how to make it happen. You have the deal. It's going to be easier to come by the money. At the very least, you can start with some phone calls and see what kind of people might want to invest with you and do this project. Or you could go the hard money route like we talked about. And one of his objections was like, I don't know how to find hard money. So here are 4 great ways to find hard money loans. So first of all, Google hard money lenders near me. It's simple, basic. I would hope that that would come to you without any thought at all. You can also just start going to local real estate investment clubs and networking. There are surely things on meetup.com or other places in groups on Facebook that you can find that actually have people meeting for mixers, having drinks, talking real estate in person, at a bar near you or something like that. So that's a great way to network in. And also you can learn a lot from other investors and flippers. Usually in an environment like that, people are willing to share a little bit about how they go about doing things. Another way you could do it is to simply make a post on social media and find out who's doing hard money loans in your town. And finally, there's actually a direct source we can provide to you. It's called Kiavi, Kiavi.com. At last reporting, they were giving out 10% rates with a 1% origination, which in this market is a pretty darn good hard money loan. So, interesting to note that in this market, you can get, in some cases, if you've got relationships and you've worked with them in the past, 8 to 10, maybe 12% hard money loans. And consumers with full documentation are paying 7 to 8% for a 30-year fixed loan. So hard money is looking a lot more attractive right now because it hasn't changed dramatically, even though mortgage rates have been creeping up on us throughout the year. Like I mentioned before, sometimes this deal that we're talking about that's going to lead to all this opportunity, it's not in any way you taking advantage of the seller. A lot of people have that on their conscience and they feel like whether you're going after a probate sale or you're just going after just a property that's real beat up and needs a lot of love, this may be also the best case for the seller, while it's also the best case for you and or your investor if you're not going to be the investor. I mean, a lot of these people, like I was kind of alluding to, they just want ease of sale. They want quickness of time. Those are both way more important to them than getting top dollar for their home. Sometimes shame comes into play. Sometimes people don't want their neighbors or the world in general, for that matter, to know how poorly they've kept up with their home or how messy it is inside or whatever the case may be. Or sometimes they just don't want their neighbors coming over saying, why are you selling? Where are you going? What are you doing? Because they just don't want to deal with it. So there's a million different reasons why helping a seller out with a quick, aggressive price that's going to be smooth and easy and giving them money in short order is going to be both best for you and or your investor, both best for the seller as well. So don't get into your own head about that if it's starting to creep in a little bit. We'll move on to this final conversation about investor talk. When you're working with an investor buyer, you want to lock up that relist, right? So obviously the simple thing is have the conversation, ask them if they're a larger group and they have an agent on staff to serve that purpose, or if they're willing to give that relist to you, and if so, at what price. Have that conversation when you are negotiating the acquisition of the property in the first place. You're still in in control when you have the listing and you've got the seller who just wants to make this quick and easy on themselves, right? So you're going to work to get them the best price out of these type of buyers, right? People who are willing to take it in rough shape. But you're also going to work to above and beyond getting your seller the best price, get you the best deal. And that means you're working with the investor, you're working with the seller, and you're working with the realist after the fact. It's a simple conversation. What are your plans? How are you going to do this? How quick is it going to take? How much have you built in for the realist compensation to both the listing agent and the buyer's compensation? And then you just discuss it like, listen, I'm in a position to help you out. I can put you in prime position here. I want to be in position to get that realist business. If that conversation goes well, put it in writing. Make mention of it in the purchase agreement and write up that listing agreement now with a post date and just get it locked away so it's not a question. I myself have been in situations where I've left it ambiguous and wish I hadn't. So go ahead, lock it down, at least have the conversation in person, followed up with a text message, and then the best way to go about this is to put it in writing with a mention of it in maybe an addendum or other remarks in the purchase agreement, and then following up those comments alluding to the listing agreement, having that drafted as well. That's going to cover our investment talk for the morning. We're moving on to our final topic of conversation, which surrounds the cancellation rates that have been on the rise lately. Let's figure out how to stop this from happening and hang on to more deals, right? So the first thing that we discussed was to assume you're in the listing agent position, and how are you going to make sure your buy side doesn't cancel on you as much, right? So you want to fully vet first the other agent that is bringing you the offer. If you're on the listing side and above the pricing and the terms, the basic conversations that you're going to have with this other agent, ask some basics. Hey, why is this property the perfect fit for this buyer? Ask these agents, has your buyer been in contract recently and fallen out? If so, how come? How long have they been looking for a property? Do they have any other offers out right now? We want to know, are they just spraying out, machine gunning offers to everyone, hoping they can get one that'll stick? Or is this really the property for them? Because if they've got 3, 4, 5 offers out right now, even if they got 2 or 3, that's going to change the way we think about the offer ourselves and present the offer to our seller, as opposed to maybe another buyer answering those same questions differently. Have a conversation with the lender as well. Ask them if they have every bit of documentation needed to fully underwrite the file. What do the DTIs look like? What's the median credit score they have? What tax rate and HOA payment are they using to pre-qualify this buyer? Like, there's lots of very simple, make sense questions that you can come up with. You can make a list for yourself to ask to really get into the psyche behind the buyer, the buyer's financing, and the buyer's agent. Like, how about, here's a question, whether this goes to the lender or to the agent. Whose client is this really? Is this a referral from another client that the agent worked with? Is this someone that the lender has done lots of loans with in the past and referred to the agent? Like, who actually originated this buyer? Where did they come from? Who's got the strongest relationship to this buyer? Because we want to know if this buyer is going to get some cold feet and not have a real serious reason for cancellation, but maybe something that could steer them in the right direction to keep moving forward. Who is the person to do that? Who's got the strongest relationship with them, who knows their best interest the best, and is going to be able to have that conversation? These are all things, when we're thinking about fallout, that we should be thinking about before we accept an offer. Another good preventative tip that was given out this morning is to see if you can pull an insurance quote in advance. Especially here in California, rates have gone crazy, and then there's also fire concerns, flood concerns, earthquake concerns. There's lots of different things that can change that insurance quote in general, let alone versus that same property this time last year. I mean, things have changed a lot in the insurance world. So make sure that we get a reasonable number of what that's going to be, because if the DTIs are tight and the qualifications are close, an insurance quote that comes in way high could blow up our deal, and that's not something we want to deal with on the other side. Frankly, even if we are working with the buyer, it could be something that we want to make sure we at least get some verbals, if not full-blown quotes for our client, to make sure we've got all bases covered. Other things we often overlook are things like solar. If you've got solar and you're on the listing side, make sure you get every bit of info you can. And if you are a buyer representing a buyer, writing on the purchase side, make sure you get all this information from the listing agent. And what kind of information would we like to know? Of course, the basics are, how is it owned? Is this thing owned outright? Is it leased? Is it financed? Is it on a power purchase agreement? Good Lord, we hope it's not on a hero loan program or something silly like that. But how is it owned, right? And then we present simply whether the best case scenario down to the least attractive to our buyers. But we also want to know, how many panels are on the roof? What is the net power cost or credit that's given each year at the end when everything is trued up? How many years are left on this lease, loan, or agreement, or whatever it may be? We need to know, in the end, compare it to your local utility provider, and how much better off are they for having this solar plan as opposed to paying the utility? Like, this is all just basic stuff that you want to think about that we are often moving too quickly to pause and dig into. And a lot of times it seems like it's too detailed or whatever, but having the answers to these questions are going to give a lot more peace of mind to that buyer if you're on the listing side, or to your client if you're on the buying side. You want to make sure that they feel comfortable and that it's validating and reassuring for them to move forward with the answers to all these questions, and not cause for concern and maybe reason to think about backing out altogether. Couple more points from the list side and the buy side, and then we'll wrap this thing up. On the list side, you want to make sure that you put yourself in a position to provide everything you possibly can as soon as you open escrow. So order that termite work ahead of time. Get the seller to fill out their disclosure paperwork. Get all this information if they're solar like we're talking about, or whatever else might be important that goes with this home. Get it all together. Have your team know that you want to be able to deliver this stuff over immediately. That gives the buyer plenty of time to look through it all. And if there's going to be something concerning on there, you haven't wasted a bunch of time just trying to get it together to get over to them to review. You've got it over there on day one, and you've got to make sure, hey, does everything look good? We don't want to be wasting too much time here, right? So that's a great way from the listing side to prevent fallout by just addressing it right away. That way, if you do end up with a cancellation, hopefully you've only lost a couple days instead of 5, 10, or 17, because that's the period that you put in for your contract with all your due diligence dates. On the buy side, we've got to be listening intently and intentionally for the cues that could end up being material later on in the deal. So if you've got clients that are walking through a property, maybe kind of questioning to each other the location, the layout, maybe road noise, maybe air traffic, just anything like this, is this going to work out with the baby being down at the end of that hall and us being here? Any conversation like that should raise a red flag for you, because a lot of times we hear conversation like that take place and still end up in a contract in that home not too much longer after that. And we have to think it's probably because of a lack of options. So let's make sure we address those things before writing it up, instead of just hoping they forget about it or they didn't really mean it when they said it to each other. It was just in passing. Like, no. If you heard that kind of stuff at a showing or maybe in conversation afterwards, and they happen to be looking to move forward on that property anyways, you don't need to talk them out of buying the home. But it's worth bringing it up once more to make sure that they feel, first of all, that they're on the same page together, because it doesn't really matter how you feel. They are in agreement that they're moving forward or that they're not going to. But second of all, that they've thought about it once more. Because you're better off, frankly, not writing on it at all, instead of going through the process of getting into escrow, being happy for them, being happy for yourself, being happy for the seller, getting a new deal, all the excitement that goes with it, only to have it fall apart 3, 5, 10 days down the road. It's a waste of time, and you would have been better off directing them to something that doesn't have those objections. Now, if you bring it up again and they're like, yeah, we said that, but X, Y, and Z, no reason to argue anymore. Let's make it happen, right? So that's kind of the final touch on the buy side. And we're going to wrap up the Mastermind recap today with that. I hope you've enjoyed talking about investor relationships, talking about probate sales, and of course, helping to figure out how to prevent cancellations from taking place. As usual, send me a message right here. I'm happy to chat about any of these conversations, and I'll talk to you soon.